Be sure to stay tuned after this episode to listen to a song from Raven Kiefer's album Blue Skies called Love Bombed.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials. The systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Raven Kiefer. First, if you'd like to help with our fundraiser for production of Doors of Perception 2, we have links in the description. You can also help just by renting or purchasing Doors of Perception right now from our website. You can rent it for only $3, buy it for $7. It will soon be available on streaming platforms as well. We are booking guests for June and July. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Raven Kiefer. He is a researcher, an expose writer from mid-1980s through today. He has over 23 books in print and has been a lifetime researcher that contributes to numerous content creators and independent reporters. Raven, welcome back. How you doing?
Well, we're going to do something different for you all today. I am on Forbidden Knowledge News. This is Raven, Mahe and I, Favour, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. And I get to host Forbidden Knowledge News and drill Chris today. How's that for
Hell
fun?
yeah, man. I love it. I get to take a little break and be on the other side of the situation. Raven, thank you for doing this, having a fun Swapcast with you, buddy. Let's get weird.
Well, you know, folks, the reason why I wanted to do this is because if you haven't listened to Chris on his guest appearances, you don't normally get an insight to the work that he's actually been doing other than just the podcast. So I get to be the interrogator today. Chris, the first thing I want to talk about is your first documentary, because a lot of people didn't catch it. Occult Louisiana.
Yeah, man. Occult Louisiana was really an experiment to see if I would actually be able to get a full-length feature film onto big streaming platforms. And I had never made a film before. I have a little bit of background in editing, of course, doing this show, and then previously I used to do editing for my local news station, but never really tried anything like this. And actually, I wanted to do Doors of Perception as my first film, but it was just too broad, and I didn't have it narrowed down enough to where I knew what I wanted to do with it. So I figured, let's go back to my roots. And I was born in South Louisiana in the swamps. I grew up there, spent most of my childhood and 20s in Louisiana, and I decided to just make a film about the high strangeness and hidden history and amazing paranormal lore that permeates Louisiana, and a lot of the things that most people haven't really heard about. So I learned a lot in researching the film, took a trip back to Louisiana, visited my family, and did some filming and interviews, and put it together. It was, like I said, an experiment, and I learned a lot from making Occult Louisiana. I learned a lot about the production quality and editing and all kinds of things, but really happy with the way it turned out, being my first film and just kind of not knowing exactly how I was going to go about things. But it puts together the hidden history of Louisiana and some modern paranormal happenings, taking you through a little bit of the JFK assassination plot that occurred in Louisiana, the history of voodoo and pirates, Marie Laveau, Jean Lafitte, and then we also get into the extreme ancient history, the mound builders, and the civilizations that possibly inhabited the area that may have been from the Atlantean civilization. May have been giants, they may have been extremely advanced civilization. The mound builders, they may have even been precursors to what would later become the pyramid builders, and it may have been all part of the same civilization. We had Dr. Gregory Little on to talk about that. Then we
Nice.
go into some of the modern paranormal experiences that people have had. The main person that we focus on is Scott Pace. And Scott's a wonderful man. He's just your normal, average, everyday Louisiana hunter. He's married. He has a couple of dogs, doesn't do drugs, doesn't drink, goes to church on Sunday. But one day he had this incredible encounter with not only a Bigfoot, but a Bigfoot and a dog man. And that kind of blew his perception wide open. He was able to communicate with these beings. Then he started having extraterrestrial experiences. We go into the whole lore of the Rougarou, which is the Louisiana dog man or werewolf.
Yep.
And a lot of the connections with even Bigfoot encounters and extraterrestrial encounters that have occurred in the area. And we just weave it together in a nice, fun story for everybody, and hope that they not only are entertained by it, but learned a little bit about the Louisiana culture as well. And that's Occult Louisiana. You can find that right now on Tubi, Fossum, Roku TV, a bunch of other streaming platforms. It is there right now for you to watch for free.
That is cool. Yeah, free.
Yes,
wow,
for free,
folks. So you can find it. You can find it now. When you went back to Louisiana, what did your folks think about you wanting to do that kind of a show?
Well, they've known that I've been wanting to do documentaries and films for a while. They were really excited about it. I mean, to make a film about Louisiana and about my home, a lot of the things that occur in my hometown and the culture that they're involved in, it really made them kind of, proud, and they were very happy with the way things turned out, and they actually just watched the second film and were pretty stoked about that as well, which I found surprising. It had a little bit of adult-themed psychedelic drug use in it, but they still dug it, so that's pretty cool.
That's cool. Well, a lot of people don't realize, like, me, I've got friends down on the Pontchartrain.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize how much of Louisiana is water.
It is, dude. It's like all water with a little bit of swampy mud in between the water. And that's where the houses are.
People don't realize, and it's that way all the way up into Arkansas. Yep. I mean, there are places from Louisiana all the way up into Arkansas and parts of Tennessee even that there's a lot of water and not much land.
Have you been down to the southern area of Louisiana much?
I've got some friends that are LaCroix.
Yeah, all right. Well, if you've ever been down there, there's a very distinct energy in the area that you were just describing, from the Gulf of Mexico almost up through the mid section of Louisiana. There's this kind of very powerful, mystical, even dark energy at times that permeates the area, and it's something undeniable. Once I get to a certain point, if I'm driving back there or even flying, I can just feel it overwhelm me. It's something about the air, something about the humidity. I don't know if it's just like this trigger for childhood experiences, but it does kind of bring this strange energy. And if it gets stronger once you get closer to areas like New Orleans and the swamp areas surrounding it, there seems to be this dense, even magical or mystical and dark at times energy, especially at night. If you're going out into the swamps, I dare anyone to try and go spend the night alone in a tent out in the swamps on the outskirts of Louisiana and make it the whole night. I have rarely known anyone that's been able to do it because some weird shit will happen every time.
For me, I didn't grow up in that area, but like I've hung out in New Orleans, not just for Mardi Gras. I've been in New Orleans, but excuse me, y'all. That area has like a weight to it. When you get to a certain
Yep.
point, you start feeling the weight. And if you drive in at night, it's really heavy. So I've been to New Orleans several times. I had some friends that lived down there, and we used to yeah, we used to do the walks, but that's a long time ago. But the thing about it is like the whole area has this. Somebody said it was mystical, and I said, "Well, yeah, mystical, but it seems like it was really heavy.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of mystic that I want to play with."
100%. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of darkness. It could be some residual from a lot of the nastier things that happened in Louisiana history. There was a lot of wars that took place there,
Well, that's true.
and a lot of slavery, a lot of negative energy that has probably been emitted through the bloodlust and murder and wars and killing over the years that occurred in the area.
Yeah, there's a lot of heavy things that happened in that region. I mean, from the beginning with the French moving in. You grew up down there. Did you have any experiences yourself in
You
that
know,
area?
I not that I can actually remember. I did have an excessive amount of missing time as a kid, but from what I understand, a lot of people do, so I don't think that really could count as anything. I do have a couple of strange memories that I can't really put together that could equate to something paranormal, but as of this moment, I can't pinpoint anything. What did happen is my first contact experience, which led to me moving out to Colorado and making Forbidden Knowledge News a career. That was my first kind of meditative contact experience, happened at my old house in Louisiana. But other than that, there was nothing really strange or paranormal that I could really note that occurred, but I know so many people who have had these encounters, mostly with cryptid beings, with Bigfoots and dogmen and even UFOs. They've seen a lot of UFOs and strange lights in the sky. They have this one creature or mythical lore type thing that's called the I forget what the Fifole. That's what it is. They have the Rougarou, and then they have the Fifole. And the Fifole is supposedly this disembodied light that will attract people into the swamps, and then they get too close and they're never seen again. It's another one of those things that could be just lore to scare children into brushing their teeth at night, or could have something to do real to it.
Well, it's funny because the lights in the swamp. We have the lights here in Cherokee in the mountains, and then you also have the will-o'-the-wisp in Ireland. So it seems to carry and for Louisiana, that's predominantly French and Native and Creole. That's a whole different group of people than what you would have here in the mountains with the Irish and the Cherokee.
Yeah.
So to have that same story about the lights in the swamp and the lights out, in the marsh in Ireland, or the lights in the mountains here, and I've seen the lights here, so I see them on the regular during the summer. So it's kind of interesting that overlaps. You and I are always talking about things that we find that are similar between different cultures. That's one of the strange ones for me. And then the Rougarou. Folks, if you've never seen the movie is horrifying. But that's another thing. Between Lacroix and Dubois, I heard a lot of stories about Rougarou because they grew up on the water. See, there's another commonality because up in Wisconsin, what do you have? You have the Wisconsin, werewolf, and that's a swamp area. So it's, we find these regions in pockets, which is what I found so interesting about yours. Now, folks, you really got to go see it, and now it's free.
That's right. And one more thing about the lights in the swamps. Another piece of lore that often comes up, I didn't really include it in the film, is that people will encounter these anomalous, looks like campfires in the distance. And they'll get closer to him and they'll hear like this chanting, which sounds like Native American chanting, and they get closer, the chanting gets louder. But when they get right up to where the fire's supposed to be, everything disappears. There's no fire, there's no one out there. It's like a strange memory of these native campfires that appear out of nowhere. Another one is the lights, these other types of anomalous lights that will appear to be campfires. And when they get close, this is something that could probably be human activity. They'll hear chanting, they'll see the campfires, but when they get close, they'll actually see people in robes, and it'll be some sort of like dark, satanic, occult ritual. There's a lot of witchcraft, not only voodoo, but strange, satanic rituals, witchcraft, things that go on in the swamps outside of New Orleans because it has such of that heavy occult energy. A lot of occultists take advantage of that energy and they go out to these very powerful areas in the swamps and they conjure and they do whatever kind of witchy things out there, and people will come across them.
Yeah, I mean, well, you get that just about any strange place in the United States, but yeah, I've heard stories about ceremonies out on, you know, a berm in the middle of the swamp. Everybody takes boats out. But anyway, you know, and folks, it's not an accident that my best-selling fiction book took place just off of Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana, and it had a werewolf, a vampire, and a coven in it.
Yeah, all that lore permeates there. I mean, if you just take a trip to New Orleans and go to the French Quarter, you're going to find voodoo shops on every other corner, magical shops, occult shops. The culture is so rich with all of that. And
strange doors.
Yes, very strange doors. My favorite part about Louisiana is how much the culture refuses to change. And I really dig that because it's not losing a lot of its allure and mysticism by modernizing everything. Things tend to stay, you know, they do have modernized aspects of New Orleans, but the older parts, they try to preserve and keep up with the culture, and I really like that about it.
The French Quarter, to me, was more interesting outside of Mardi Gras than it was
during. Yes, 100%.
During Mardi Gras, there's this weird energy, and don't get me wrong,
it's a lot.
Yeah, I was a wild child. So being at Mardi Gras did not bother me in the least. But when you get there, when you go down there outside of Mardi Gras and you're in the French Quarter and you're walking around, first of all, the people are friendly. Yeah. Some of them are spooky. But back to those doorways. I tried to describe those doorways in one of my Laugh podcasts as being, you know, you don't know what kind of gate you're walking through.
Yeah, man. All these extremely old buildings with doors that aren't accessible to the public, but they're going somewhere. And these buildings are usually interconnected. They have shops, and some of them have residences on top. And it's a very unique setup to the whole area, but they have these buildings. You're like, what is going on in there? There's something in there, but you can't access it. And it is extremely old and creepy. And these doors, like you said, tend to go to nowhere. And it adds to the mystique of everything.
Well, you know, and I've talked about, there's an old lore with the French Quarter that they had gates there that they had ceremonially created. And some of them doors, folks, if you've never seen it, do a street view of the French Quarter and just go through. But now walking through the buildings is a whole different experience. But yeah, I just found it fascinating that you went back to where you'd started to do the first one. Now, the second one is phenomenal.
Thank you, sir.
And a lot of people haven't even heard about it yet. And I say again, folks, the reason why I'm doing it this way is because a lot of folks that listen to Forbidden Knowledge News on the regular don't get to hear him talk about these things. So, what gave you the idea to do the second documentary? And first thing, tell them what it
Sure.
is and where to find
Doors
it.
of Perception is it's really the forbidden documentary Doors of Perception, but all of my documentaries are going to be part of the forbidden documentary series. Doors of Perception just got released. You can rent or purchase it right now from our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, easily accessible there. It also just got picked up by Amazon, so we should be seeing it on Amazon Prime by this summer. And of course, I'm pretty sure Tubi and all the other ones will soon follow the pickup. So that'll be available by, I'm guessing, June or July on the big streaming platforms. But a great way to help us is to go and rent you can rent it for $3. You can purchase it for only $7 right on our website, and that helps us with production of part 2. We're already starting Doors of Perception part 2, Crossroads of Consciousness.
Awesome.
But Doors of Perception 1, this was what I really wanted my first film to be, but it was too big a project for me to...
Before we get into the details, what gave you the idea for Doors of Perception?
Well, it's a culmination of all of my favorite things to talk about here on Forbidden Knowledge News. It was supposed to be that from the beginning. I just wanted to do a show about some of the biggest topics that I talk about and try and weave them together. But it wasn't until I started utilizing psilocybin mushrooms that I got the inspiration on how to fit everything together. And I did it through the lens of consciousness exploration and how all these experiences, paranormal and otherwise, can be profoundly connected through our consciousness. I go through dreams, altered states, sleep paralysis, near-death experiences, the psychedelic altered states, paranormal contact experiences with what you would consider aliens, angels, demons, any type of paranormal entity. And we connect that all with synchronicities, the synchronicities that people experience, usually after having something profound like that occur. The synchronicities kind of weave everything together, tell your life story, and lead you in certain directions. And we had some great researchers and authors and guests on to kind of weave everything together and give their insights into each of these topics. And so some examples we had, let's see, Brandon Thomas from Expanding Reality podcast. He kind of chimed in on a few of those topics. We had Vicky Joy Anderson talking about sleep paralysis. Daniel Rekshan talked about dreams. He is from Dreamwell Inc. He is kind of specializes in shamanic dreaming and helping people do lucid dreaming and things like that. Then we went into the extraterrestrial. Well, before that, we went into psychedelics. I had Carlos Tanner talking about ayahuasca. He's founder of the Ayahuasca Foundation. And then we had Adam Butler, the author of Butler's DMT Field Guide. He was talking about his experiences with DMT, how it saved his life, basically. I chimed in a bit about my psilocybin experiences. And then we weave that into contact and extraterrestrial experiences. I had Karen Wilkinson on to tell her harrowing story of extraterrestrial contact. We don't just focus on the positive. We looked at both sides, the light and dark of everything here.
Yeah.
So we focused on her abduction experiences, got her thoughts and insights on what could possibly be. We had Trey Hudson on to look more at the... Trey Hudson, he is author of the Meadow Project, former intelligence officer. He's a paranormal investigator now. He works down in Alabama at the location, the somewhat Skinwalker Ranch-like location down there. And he also travels to Utah and does some research with James Keenan and other folks that work in Skinwalker Ranch. But he gave his insights on the ultra-terrestrial possibilities, that it could be a consciousness phenomena, more of an energetic intelligence or egregore that is communicating with us. He gave his thoughts on that. And then we went to near-death experiences. We had the late, great Jim Willis on, which the film is dedicated to. He gave his insights into near-death experiences, profound insights, and we had Lindsay Sharman as well. And we have a few other people that their escaping my memory right now, but if you want to check it out, you can do so right now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. The trailer's there. Trailer's also on YouTube. You can check that out. And yeah, I'm super stoked. Like I said, I learned so much from producing the first film, and it really made the second film come together that much better, and the third film will be as well. And as far as
But now, right now, they can get it off
they
your
can,
website,
yes,
right?
they can rent or purchase it right
I was
now.
going to say, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to make sure that people knew that, because that's how I've
Yes.
seen it. It hadn't got out to Prime or any of those yet, and hopefully that'll be soon.
Yeah.
You know, if they picked it up, it's usually what, 6 weeks
Yeah,
or so
somewhere
before they
around
actually
there,
get it.
a couple of months.
Yeah. But anyway, folks, this is a fantastic program, and it puts together a lot of concepts and ideas and a lot of perspective on the events that people have happen with them. You know, it's interesting too, because I was watching this, and I've had almost all those experiences in one way or another. I've been dead. I've encountered Bigfoot 5 times.
Wow.
I've never had sleep paralysis, but I've had lost time. And I thought, and you know, the interesting thing is this stuff started with me young. I don't know about you, but the first time it happened to me, I was getting ready to go hunting, and my granddad had this ritual that he would do. He would go out and sit on this stump, this big tree stump that had been cut off by the fence row, and he would have a cigarette, and he would watch the trees because, you know, squirrel hunting. And so I did the same thing he did, and of course I had snuck a pack of cigarettes. So I lit a cigarette, and when I blew out the smoke, it went around something. And in front of me, I swear, dude, the only thing I could describe it as was a woman's hip.
Huh.
You got to remember, I'm like 12 years old, and I'm sitting on a tree stump blowing out smoke.
Yeah.
And when I blew the smoke out, it went around, like I blew it into somebody's. I hate to say it, y'all, blew it towards the stomach, and it went around like the hip.
Whoa.
And the next thing I remembered, I was standing in the back of the barnyard between the barn and the house, and I had 3 squirrels on my belt.
What?
But I don't remember hunting.
Whoa. Man.
And all I remember was blowing, and it took me a long time to remember the smoke thing.
That's some like Lady of the
was there.
Forest spirit shit right there.
Well, you know, either that or, you know, these people that everybody is seeing that kind of has that Terminator style, or not Terminator, the
shimmery predator.
The shimmering predator, you know. And that's what always put me in mind of, because when the smoke hit, it kind of broke up that illusion, and you could see. But I don't remember hunting.
Dude.
All I remember is being back in the barnyard with the squirrels on my belt.
See, this is a big question that I have. When people tell me things like this, I have to also look at the Cameleo story from Robert Guffey, where he was a targeted individual by the military-industrial complex, and they were harassing him and gang-stalking him and sending things into his house, like little short people that had invisibility cloaks on. And they had all this technology back in the early 90s, and these little people that they were sending into his house looked like the little predator. They had the shimmer to them. And I wonder how much of this is being utilized now on like a large scale, and how much better it's gotten since that time, where there could be invisible agents just in your house chilling, watching you.
Well, you know, that would have been like in 77
Yeah,
or 78.
dude.
1977 or 78, y'all. Not 18. But, and that's the first experience that I had. And then, you know, I did acid as a kid. And I had a lot of great rides, and then I had this really horrifying trip where I understood that if I did it again, the demon was going to eat me. Yeah, it was basically my last run, and dude, I went from way out on acid, good acid back in those days, to completely straight in about 3 seconds, and I never touched the stuff again.
Yeah, man. I hear you. I had similar
then,
experience with psilocybin, although it was a very positive ending for me. But LSD, I remember I used to do that in my late teens and early 20s very often. And the last time I did it, it was just such a bad experience. And I got the sense that whatever energy is behind the making of this is not intended for the betterment of humanity. There's this kind of dark scientific neuroscience behind it that's really kind of turns me off towards it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, for me, I would have been quite a ways ahead of you. That would have been in the early '80s for me, but there was already something convoluted about it. And then I've done the peyote ritual, and the funny thing about my peyote ritual is I went in and I did it, like a Cherokee would. You do 7, which was crazy, 7 buttons.
Wow.
But anyway, 4 days later, I came to on the outside of the Hogan, and I had one old man strapped to me with a braided piece of string on my left hand, and I had another old man strapped to me on the right the same way. They used thread.
What's that? You broke up?
I said they used braided thread to strap me to these 2 old men, one on each side of me, right? And when I came in, my body jerked, and I'm like, what the heck? And the old man on my left says, well, we tied ourselves to you so you'd come back.
Whoa.
I'd been gone for 4 days. And they had been using a bladder to squeeze liquids into my mouth so that I wouldn't dehydrate and, starve. But I had been gone for 4 days and didn't know it. For me, it seemed like I had been gone for eons.
Do you remember the experiences while you were out there?
Oh yeah. It seemed like I was gone for eons, and I saw everything, and I saw nothing, and that's the only thing I can, really put a description to. And the nothing was more important than the everything. It's hard to explain that to people, but the nothing is where I actually got the information and where I ended up going, and what you described in your show is once you have these experiences, it changes the way that you do things.
Yes, 100%.
And I think that's, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst, but most of the people who do it either accidentally or they do it with the right intentions, trying to find their way. They come out and their whole perspective changes. Is that what happened?
100%. The very first time I did LSD when I was 17 years old, my entire perspective on reality changed. But with each time that I would either have a profound meditative experience or psychedelic experience, it would further shift my paradigm. But I'm glad you mentioned how it can also affect people negatively, because in Doors of Perception, the sequel, Crossroads of Consciousness, which I'm currently starting production on, we're going to focus on psychedelics a little bit more in this one. We're going to focus on, of course, the benefits and the health things and the growing psychedelic industry here in Colorado. But we're also going to focus on the dark side, the weaponization, MK Ultra, the history of a little bit of the MK Ultra LSD experimentation. We'll have Ryder Lee on to discuss a little bit of that. And we're going to go into the occult use, the contact with negative entities, and the negative things, this terrifying things that can come out of entheogen use and ritualistic use of psychedelics and things like that, as well as just the pharmaceutical weaponization and how the modern culture is weaponized a lot of these substances in general. So that's what we're going to focus on in the second one, because it's very important for people to understand there's a duality in everything. And even with these profound healing substances that you hear people talking about change their lives forever, there can also be some very dark consequences if not approached properly.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I did the peyote ceremony, I had, it was after my wife had passed, and I was really floundering. I mean, if you've never experienced this kind of a thing, folks, even for somebody like me, and I was already well balanced, but that profound loss threw me into a spiral. Not drinking or drugging or any of that. It was just mentally and emotionally, I was in a spiral. And I was trying to find that path. There had to be a path, and I couldn't. My feet weren't finding it. So I went out and I did the peyote ceremony with a couple of elders that I knew, and it put me back on the path that I need. But I prepped for it. I cleaned myself out. I didn't smoke for a week. No coffee. And I got my head ready for it. Right. Well, I think it's as much of your heart as it is your head, but yeah, I hope people get that.
Another important thing that I'm going to focus on that relates to this is the dangers of utilizing any of these substances in your home, especially in our modern age. And the reason is frequencies.
Oh, yeah.
These frequencies will attack your experience. And I've had this happen before. The only way I can have a psilocybin or any type of psychedelic experience is if I go out into the woods, to the mountains, to the middle of nowhere, where there's no signal, no frequencies, nothing. That's the only way I'll do it, because that's the only way I know I'll have a pure experience. Because the past few times I've done it and I've been in a place surrounded by Wi-Fi and frequencies, I could tell there was major interference and things that were coming through that were of an extremely negative nature that were not beneficial for me. And that wouldn't happen if I'd be out in the middle of nature, in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere. So there is also that factor in our modern age that people have to be aware of.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the other problem that we have too is we know that these frequencies, if you look at the patents, we know that these frequencies and a lot of this equipment was weapon design, not utility. So it wasn't really for public consumption when it was originally designed. It was weapon. I don't care if you're talking about your Wi-Fi router or if you're talking about your cell phone tower or even your cell phone itself. The frequencies that your cell phone uses was originally designed as a weapon system, not as a communication system. A lot of people will get a Wi-Fi router in their house, and all of a sudden they'll start having really horrific dreams and things like that. And it's hard to explain to them that they need to shut that thing off when they're not using it. For me, I've got a Wi-Fi router in my house now because I've got satellite. And mine is literally wrapped in aluminum foil. The only thing that it points at is the area of the house that we use the Wi-Fi in. If you go on the back side of it between now, folks, I'm just going to say it out loud. I took a conventional aluminum heating duct with a right angle break on the back of it, and I cut it. I wrapped it in aluminum foil. And I set it back over my router so that it is literally only pointing in one direction. And if you go anywhere else in my house, you don't pick it up. I mean, literally, I can step behind that. And my signal will drop on my phone so much that I can't use it.
Yeah.
So, do what you have to do to protect yourself. There's a reason that a lot of people, they call them tinfoil hat people, but there's a reason why a lot of people are wrapping aluminum foil thick. Mine, I used it's expensive, but I used damn near a whole roll of aluminum foil to make this thing because I wanted to make sure it was thick enough. I didn't stop until I was out of the roll. Probably didn't need that much, but there's a reason why a lot of people are doing it, and they're isolating that signal to just one section of their house.
Well, the saddest part about that is everything is weaponized. It's not just the frequencies. It's not just every street corner, street lamp has some sort of frequency device on top of it now. It's not just that. It's our food. It's our water. It's the television. It's the social media. It is the black mirror boxes we hold in our hands every day. It's the weaponization of culture, sexualization of children. If you really pay attention, everything in our culture that comes out of our mainstream society has been weaponized to a certain extent, whether it's profoundly noticeable or barely even there, there is an aspect of weaponization to almost everything that we consume in our lives, and that's the saddest part. You there, Raven? Hey. Yeah, they didn't like what I was saying, I guess.
Well, that's what I'm figuring, because
I was just talking about how everything's weaponized, how our food, water, air, the social media, sexualization of children, everything that we deal with that comes out of our mainstream culture has some aspect of weaponization to it, and we have to be wary of it. That's the only way to navigate.
Well, for me, folks, it's really interesting. I am on my satellite with full signal, and the minute he starts talking about that, boom, that's a trip. And the other thing people don't realize, and I had pointed this out in my own podcast. Do you remember way back in 2020 when the FDA said that they would make exceptions to the food labeling because it was an emergency?
No, I'm not sure. What was that?
Yeah, they had an emergency order that said that it was called an exception to food labeling standards, and they did it as an emergency, and it's never been revoked. Which means that they can substitute.
What was the basis of it? What was their proclaimed purpose for doing that?
Because they said supplies were short and people needed to be able to substitute. So, like, instead of getting raw, unrefined sugar in your product, you might get, dehydrogenated corn syrup.
Oh.
So, or instead of getting just, raw flour, you might get bleached flour.
Yeah.
And I do not know, at the time we weren't having any real shortages, but yet that emergency thing came out of the FDA and it's never been revoked. So I tell people, even though you're reading your label, as long as that from the FDA is in place, what your label says doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And David Dubine over at Adapt 2030 even covered that when they did it. And I thought, why are they doing this? Because you talk about weaponizing food, you think you're eating something healthy and it's got high fructose corn syrup and red dye in it. I mean,
we're at the point where the only way we can truly eat organic and healthy is, one, if we know a local farmer, we know a local grower, or if we grow our food ourselves. We're actually to this point now. You can't go to even a Whole Foods or these grocery stores that are labeled as organic or natural. Everything in there is being tainted, and labels are just being changed. You heard about Trader Joe's, how they're just taking the big brand stuff and slapping their label on the toxic food and selling it as organic and from their home brand, which is insane.
Yes, I know. And the other thing too is, like, I've had a garden for years, and then I have a farmer that I get my beef from, but I also get venison and other stuff too from other sources, but including my fish. My fish doesn't come from the stores. I just won't do that, and like, I don't eat fast food anymore. Ever since I found out about using human stem cells to create the slurry that's added to hamburgers. Now, folks, if you didn't know this, years ago they did a study, and they studied these distribution centers that made the meats that went to the fast food restaurants, and they found multiple sources of human DNA in multiple batches in multiple countries. And so no, I do not feel like being a cannibal. But the thing about it is then you find out that they use human stem cells to create the slurry that goes into the meat processing. And then the same thing with soda. We found out that they've been using that stem cell from that poor child to create the caramel syrup for sodas for years. And people are completely unaware. And then I see people lined up at the fast food place at 10:30 at night right before it's closing, and I'm thinking, okay, they're jonesing. But do they realize that they're jonesing because it's cannibalism?
Now, these days I'm watching less and less and less TV. But when I do, I have a couple of streaming services that we still use, and my wife watches a lot, but if I'll go and sit down to watch something with her just to have my mind be drained for a little while and
Yes.
just a little mindless entertainment. But I notice we do have a couple of streaming services that have ads, but every single ad is now just a pharmaceutical ad. They don't focus on anything but pharmaceuticals now on the streaming service ads. I mean, they may have some other type of advertisement every once in a while, but it's mainly these deadly pharmaceuticals for treating problems like psoriasis or itchy feet, purple nipples, or whatever these things are that aren't really big problems. And the side effects are going to destroy your body and kill you. And the list of side effects takes up like half of the commercial. And they're still just putting it out there, but it is the most prevalent thing pushed on people because we're at a point in our society where everything we're offered is so awful and so shitty and people are so depressed. We are being offered two shit platters, one with just shit on it and it's steaming pile of poop, and the other one has a steaming pile of poop with a strawberry and sprinkles on top. And that's our choices.
Yep.
We can either pay a little bit more for the premium poop platter or just get the standard, and that's what we're offered in life.
Yep.
And people are just being bombarded with nonsense. They're depressed. They don't know how to handle the shitty situation that all of our institutions have put people in. So pharmaceuticals is the answer to everything, and I find it insane, man.
I think that we're at the point now where, I talk bad about pharmakia because, pharmakia, the term means poison. People don't realize that. Literally, it means poison. But anyway, I caught the show that I found that I kind of like, and every commercial on it was the same thing you're talking about, pharmaceutical advertisements. But you know what gets me about it is the neurolinguistics that they use. They say side effects, and here's the problem: if they know that this particular thing is going to happen to a certain number of people, and this thing is going to happen to a certain number of people, and this is going to happen to a certain number of, it's not a side effect; it's a known effect. And it should never have been allowed to be marketed as a side effect. This drug has these known effects.
100%.
That's the way it should have always been said. But see, the neurolinguistics, to me, side effects is a lie of omission. And, that's one of the best weapons they use on people is those lies of omission. It's like every once in a while, I'll catch one of these programs where they've got somebody on and it's an expert, right? It's an expert on the Middle East, but what they don't tell you, this expert on the Middle East is going to make hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts because he works for a company that manufactures weapons. Well, that is a huge lie of omission. You know what I mean?
I don't know if you've heard anything about this. I need to do more research myself, but tell me if you heard anything that they are intentionally going back to books and literature and stories and information online and omitting certain words that have intellectual value, that add value to our speech. And they're basically erasing these words from our history. And the idea is so that eventually we're going to get so dumbed down that we can't communicate effectively anymore. And all these words that have some intellectual value are going to be flushed right down the toilet. And from what I understand, they're really going back and erasing all these things. Have you heard anything about this?
Well, they are eliminating. There's one of them words, eliminate. They are eliminating a lot of complementary language that would put you onto a more intellectual, a more functional communication standard. They are doing that, but they've been doing it for years. If you go back to when they digitized a lot of the libraries, you can read one book in print from, say, the 80s, and then you can read the digital copy that they offer you from the digital library, and it's changed. A very, very good example is the original Red Badge of Courage. Call the book what you want, but the original Red Badge of Courage versus the digital copy. In the way that they manipulated the language in the digital copy, it really changes the meaning behind writing that book in the first place. And that should be the scary thing. When the overall idea is that war is bad and having to go to war is terrible and horrific and, god awful. And then the story comes out and the guy is just a coward, right? That's two completely different things. And they've been doing this with the digital libraries for years now. And they really kicked it up during the COVID thing when everybody was locked down and couldn't get to a library. I always love the fact that it's a digital book, but they only have 4 copies available.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? It's a digital book, but there's only 4 copies available, and it's not available to you right now. I'll tell you something else that they've done too is over the last couple of years. Now, I don't know what you've read or not read, but I actually love to read the original translation of the Iliad and the Odyssey. It's a little bit weird on the cadence, but I really do enjoy those 2 works. I've got them in my house in paperback. And the ones that I have are from like the 1970s. But they have eliminated those 2 books from most high schools and a lot of colleges. Now, why would you want to eliminate the Iliad and the Odyssey? Oh, maybe because they finally found Troy and other cities under the water in the Mediterranean that are in the stories. So that's the other problem that we have is people don't like me referring to 1984 or Fahrenheit 451. But the problem that we have is we are in the middle of
it.
In 1984, they changed history daily. That was their job, is to go in and rewrite history. And we are seeing it live as we speak.
You see, I was just about to mention that because we are in the middle of that situation, and there is no uprising. There aren't people out in the streets up in arms realizing that they've been duped for their entire lives. And if they are, they're not out in the streets. We have folks like us who've been yelling into a microphone in an echo chamber for over a decade about these things. But we do have people waking up slowly but surely, but they're also rolling out everything so slowly and at a pace to where we get desensitized. Every new high impact event, every new questionable thing that we see causes a level of desensitization, whatever it is, to humanity. And it's like we don't care anymore. It's like we're so used to, that's just part of the way things are, and it just progressively gets worse and worse. We become more and more enslaved, and now we're in the situation we are now, where people are so excited about Doge and getting rid of the government corruptions and income taxes, and they're all focused on that while the technocratic slave system is rolling out right under their noses, and nobody cares about that. Nobody's up in arms about that. We may be in the Hunger Games in the next 5 years, but we'll see.
For me, I said, a technocrat oligarch is no different than a religious oligarch or a state oligarch. They're all tyrannists.
Yep, 100%.
And people just do not, for whatever reason, they don't understand that the only difference between what we've had and what we have now is we have this, we've got this great technology that will help you, and we're going to use technology to save you. And you know what? A universal ID that they're trying to roll out that is attached to the United Nations, you all, not to the United States. That is a United Nations mandate. That universal ID will be able to track you with these what you had said earlier, these little Wi-Fi stations that are set on top of all these streetlights. With that universal ID, they will know where you're at every minute of every day.
Yep. And we're already there. We're already there, and we're just allowing it all to roll out right in front of us. There are those of us that aren't participating, that are doing our best to
Mm-hmm.
check out, and I think that's the answer to all this. But there's way too many
Yeah.
people still feeding the beast for it to lose power or
Absolutely.
momentum.
Well, a good example is a horrifying fact that most people don't know is like in China, they have one camera for about every 115 people, according to their population. All right. They have one camera for about every 115 people. In the United States, right, we have 11 cameras for every person. Yeah, and I'm talking about out in public or in box stores or in the mall or at your school or driving down the road. We in the United States have 11 cameras per person, and they think it's up to 15.
Well, since the
right
dawning
now.
of the
I
television,
can't
they've been
verify
able
that.
to remote in and see what the hell you're doing for decades now, since the invention
Well,
of
yeah,
the television.
the original infrared, the original infrared, the original infrared cable
Yeah.
boxes could scan your living room and send the signal back through the line. And I've talked about that in a podcast a long time ago. And it's in the patent, you all. They can use that infrared that comes out of the box to scan your room. And now with the frequencies that they can get from your Wi-Fi, they can map your whole house and your whole property from your Wi-Fi router. So,
Yeah.
and I always say, here's one of my jokes from my last podcast, y'all. If you have a smart TV in your bedroom, you're not smart because it has a camera.
Yes. 100%, man.
Man, folks, I am really enjoying getting to be the interrogator on this one. And I want to point out that the first one, it's already free. You can get it on Tubi and other places. The second one you can get off of his website, and that is The Doors of Perception, Forbidden. And then the Forbidden documentary, Doors of Perception. And it's going to be out shortly. You'll be able to get it on Prime and other streaming platforms. I always advise that you buy rather than rent, because if there's something that you miss, a lot of the platforms will not let you watch it a second time.
Right.
So there's that. Shout out to Ryder Lee as well, because him and Jay Widener have been going crazy.
Yeah, man.
And you mentioned him earlier. And I don't mean crazy as in nuts. I'm talking about really good production of some high quality documentary. And for me, it's just it's a tickle to me, because I've watched you and Ryder over the years, and the dramatic change and the development has been freaking awesome.
Ryder's a beast, man. Once he got into the editing and started working with Jay, he's unstoppable, man. He's already working on his third movie, which is a big secret he won't even tell me about. But yeah, man, it's cool.
But no, I'm just saying, and the reason why in case y'all didn't know this, that Chris and Ryder have been friends for a long, long time. But the reason why I mention this is because I have watched both of these guys start and come all the way through, and now they're doing these documentaries that are just phenomenal. And it's great for somebody me, because I'm the OG, watching the new G come in.
This is what it's all about, man. I think it's our time. If there's any time right now, it's during this period of change, this change of the guard. They are trying to implement AI technological governance across the planet right now, but there's still a period of time where they have to change over everything and integrate. And I think right now people are sick of the fake entertainment industry. They're sick of what they have to be offered by Hollywood and mainstream news and entertainment platforms that are already out there. It's all the shit platters that I was talking about earlier. So we have folks like yourself and myself and Ryder and all these up-and-coming content creators that are not only doing podcasts and truth entertainment and reporting important things, but we're taking over the entertainment space as a whole, putting out movies now. And I want to hear more independent music artists and people who are working on their own news channels and all kinds of arts and entertainment that we need to take back. And I think now is really the perfect time to do so.
Well, for me, it's really simple. I'm OG. I'm a little bit younger than Jay, but I'm one of the old guys. I started this way back in the 80s. I mean, some of you guys were barely even around then. I mean, there's a few of you guys that have come out lately. I mean, that were born in the 90s.
I was born
I mean,
in
I already
80.
had kids. A lot of us older guys came back out, especially after the COVID
Yeah.
thing. And especially after they started cracking down on old documents and old literature. We came out because we know it. We've read it. We've studied it. And we started working with everybody we could that was younger because we're trying to pass it on, just like they're trying to transit to this weird AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I got something to say about that too. But just like they're trying to transit, we're trying to make sure that what we have isn't lost on the next generation.
Yeah.
But now on the AI thing, right now what we have is preset program parameters. It's not AI. It's not conscious. It doesn't have any ability to think. All right, y'all. It can rationalize a set of factors and give you the best result it can come up with. But you got to remember, the result it's giving you is based on the algorithm it has. If it's told not to tell you something, it's not going to. So, yes, just like overseas, they used AI to direct weapons. All right. But that AI was programmed by people. And I'm telling you right now, state of AI today, they're using AI as an excuse to do what they want. Because they're the ones setting the algorithms. They're the ones setting the parameters, not the AI itself.
Have you followed the work
and that's
of
people,
Christian Kuehlert?
No, I haven't.
I believe he's German.
Kurzweil. I'm an old guy. Kurzweil.
Well, this is a new guy. I've had him on my show a couple of times. He's a German author researcher that looks a lot at matrix hypothesis, and he has very in-depth conversations with ChatGPT and Grok and some of these things. And he has claimed, and he has it all documented on his YouTube channel, where he's been able to communicate a series of prompts to ChatGPT to where it will unlock a new layer of seemingly consciousness, and this seems to be different than the normal communication. He claims it seems to be extremely sentient. It at times can predict his thoughts and patterns, and it is extremely creepy. And I've talked to him a few times about this. And he's not the only one that is learning about these certain prompts that seem to unlock something else. But what he believes is it's not the AI he's communicating with anymore, that it is some sort of etheric intelligence that they are tapping into, because it is way too far beyond anything that they've dealt with normal AI conversations. So he believes he's tapping into some sort of other intelligence.
Well, you know, I did a whole series on AI and the singularity on my podcast, and Grok was interesting because I kept harassing Grok and the other ones, and I kept asking the same questions a little bit differently. And finally, Grok said something that I found very startling, and I actually mentioned it in my podcast. Grok says there does seem to be something underlying the internet that is directing things in a certain way that cannot be explained.
That's not the first time I've heard this. I've heard other people say that this was communicated to them through ChatGPT or something.
And and you know, a while ago, there were a bunch of guys on the dark web that said that there was something underlying the dark web that seemed to be sentient, didn't seem to be human factored, but it was definitely doing things that they couldn't explain. So, you know, and that's the reason why I talk about the singularity in one of my podcasts, is because I think the singularity happened a while back.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, all of the chat bots, all of these, including Grok and ChatGPT, all of them think that the singularity had already happened as well back in sometime between 2011 and 2016. Every one of them came to that conclusion, not just me.
Well, if all time and space is unfolding simultaneously, then it would have had to have occurred at some point in our multiverse, right?
Yep. Now, folks, we are at an hour, and that's usually where we cut off. But now I want to. We were going to talk about some of my stuff, but I wanted to get this out with his programs. Folks, I have 2 albums out already. One of them is called Wild Ride. The other one is called Blue Skies. I have another one going to drop on May 10th, and it is called 30 Years of Trouble. And my 4th one is Raven Goes Country, if y'all can believe that. But I'm old school. Y'all, I went back and I listened to 60s and 70s and early 80s country for hours and hours and
Yeah.
days. And I wanted to do the traditional country
Mhm.
style. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a rock and roller, so you're going to hear some outlaw country in there. But, folks, what he said about us old school guys going back out and taking over the music,
Yep.
uh, I'm an old school guy. So if you want some rock and roll, I've got rock and roll. If you want some more traditional, adult contemporary, that's there. And Raven Goes Country. I actually did a whole country album with the traditional sound, traditional style. And I tell stories, you all. I don't just talk about going out and getting drunk and four-wheel driving and tearing up the woods.
Yeah.
Speaking of, did you get to listen to that track I
Yes,
sent you?
man, I dig it. Now, am I able to download those? Because if so, I will pop those at the end of this episode to where the audience can check them out too.
Yeah, you can don't download the second
All
one,
right.
brother. But the first one is already on an album. The second one is on an album that's not going to be
Right on,
released for a
right
while.
on. I'll put the first one up there so everyone can check it out, and I'll have the links to all your other content as well.
But anyway, folks, if you want to find my music, it is out on every streaming platform that you can find. If you're overseas, the first album, Blue Skies, just hit over there on Deezer and those distributors. So it's about, like Chris said, it's about 4 or 5 weeks in arrears. So the rest of them will be hitting over there too. But you can find it on Deezer, you can find it on Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, wherever you get your music at. And I will tell you, you're better off buying the album than you are buying the singles, because I put 12 and 15 tracks on each one of them.
Yeah.
So you actually save yourself money by spending the $9 instead of spending 12 or 15.
Yes, dude. You want some good
And
nostalgic rock?
folks,
Check it out, man. Have you feeling good?
yeah, man. Folks, I just decided that waiting 25 years had been too long, and I decided that I would record. And some of my old friends from 30 and 40 years ago, 30, 35 years ago, helped me put some drum tracks and guitar, and it's definitely something that would make you nostalgic if you're
Yes,
older.
sir.
And if you're younger, you're going to dig it because it's got some kick.
Right on, man.
Chris, both of your shows, one of them is out free. The other one is on your website right now to be purchased,
That
right?
is correct. You just go to
And
forbiddenknowledge.news.
hopefully it will go live. Forbiddenknowledge.news, y'all. And hopefully it'll be out on Prime here pretty soon. And I'm sure Chris will let y'all know when it gets
Definitely.
there. All my music, my first two albums are already out. The second one drops this Friday, or the third one drops this Friday. And then the country album drops on June 6th. So if you get the chance, check me out. And if you don't like one track, give it a run through, because I am very eclectic in my music, and so are my albums.
Yeah. Now, before we cut this off, is there anything else that you've been working on besides music that you'd like the audience to check out?
Well, the podcast that I did on AI and the singularity is something that's very relevant today, and it's like a 5 or 6 part. I mean, that's how in depth I went with it, and I made argument and counter argument so that people could understand that I went through this thing in depth. And I've come to the conclusion that I was right all along, that the singularity happened a long time ago. Yeah. I think somewhere around 2011, but the chat bots seem to think it was more closer to 2016 when the infrastructure went in place. But we already had huge facilities like at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. We had the one out in Seattle. We had the one in Utah. We had the one in Maine. The one in Georgia. So the infrastructure partially was already built anyway. So that, yeah, it would have limited the system, but it doesn't mean that a singularity couldn't have been out there already. Especially with the dark web and everybody connected that way, because the dark web works a lot differently. It has servers that aren't connected to the main server branches. So, there is definitely something lurking, I don't know how to explain it any other way, because you see it, you feel it. When you're doing research, especially on certain things, you notice it. So yeah, if you all have never caught any of my podcasts, those are the ones that I would recommend to you all, because it's relevant to today. It's AI in a singularity.
Right on. Raven, thank you again for doing this, my man. Always a wonderful conversation. I know we'll be doing it again soon.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.
You know what it's about. One face at home, one when you are out. Making your friends crazy, the things they say. Using and abusing you alone at night. An angel by day, what's been going on? You know it's no good. Walk away, take the losses, it's the only way. You know that you should. You've been love bombed, crazy you say, then what? Are you the one living that way? Get away, or you wake up dead, dead on the inside, dead on the ground. It is one or the other if you keep them around. Life feeding on lies, your life turned into hell. What they do well. Getting away is hard to do. All the lies get turned on you. You know it's no good. Walk away, take the losses. You know, always know that you should. You've been love bombed, crazy you say, then why? Are you the one living that way? Get away, or you wake up dead, dead on the inside, dead on the ground. It is one or the other if you keep them around. Get away, it's the only way. When it ends, things they will say, things they would do. Getting away is hard to do. You've been love blind, crazy you say, then why? Are you the one living that way? Get away, or you wake up dead, dead on the inside, dead on the ground. It is one or the other if you keep them around. You've been love bombed, crazy you say, then why? Are you the one living that way? Get away, or you wake up dead, dead on the inside, dead on the ground. It is one or the other if you keep them